And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who just loves World War II dramas. Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, oh boy, is it ever beautiful today. And Colonel Jeff and I are not on Milleronia, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But we're back here on the mainland, and it's gorgeous here in Southern California. It's something that really makes you smile and say, well, thank you. You know what? You look up and say thank you. And, or you look straight out over the valley and say thank you. But I'm saying thank you. And I'm saying thank you to you folks too. Thank you for your help in the weather. But after all, it's not on Milleronia where I control the weather every single day. I'm not touchy about that. I'm just mentioning that's the way it occurs. But boy, oh boy, is it beautiful and so nice to be home here today. And golly, that music makes me feel so good. I know I've said that before, but it's true every time. That's the Laurence Olivier Orchestra and the Marilyn Monroe Dancers featuring boy tenor Mike Lucking asking the musical question, did anyone else have their sexual awakening watching Jill St. John in Diamonds Are Forever? First of all, yes. Yes. That's a big yes. That's an absolutely yes. Wow. Good choice, Mike. I mean, yeah, she killed me. She was great. She was beautiful and sexy and all those big, the James Bond movies, every movie she was in. And she was also older than you, but in a great way. I mean, she was more mature than you and someone you just thought, her, I'd like her. And she was redhead and terrific skin and sassy in an acceptable and enviable way. She had a lot going on upstairs. Nobody's fool. And, in fact, she had an IQ of 162. The colonel looked that up. Now, that's pretty smart. That's a pretty good noggin. And so she was not the kind of dame you'd get one over on, but someone who fit the word. Someone who fit the word dame. And it was just, in fact, it might have been coined for her. But plus we the colonel found out here that she was married to Robert Wagner, and who Colonel Jeff just said was in the top 5 coolest people he ever met. He met Robert Wagner, and he said this guy is the coolest. And not trying to be cool, just naturally fantastic. And I was glad to hear that, because I always loved Robert Wagner. And, I'm just glad. I'm married to Jill St. John. Well, now I'd always like to meet him, but now I'd like to say, it's a pleasure to meet you. You are super cool. Let me ask you a quick question about Jill. But I wouldn't, of course, because that would make me kind of low and trashy to ask that. You know what? Maybe I could figure out a nicer way to ask it. But boy, oh boy, Mike, you're right. Did anyone else have their sexual awakening watching Jill St. John in Diamonds Are Forever? Yes, absolutely yes. She's brilliant, cool, gorgeous, and she knocked my 12-year-old socks off. No better name for that than sexual awakening. The only word to add is, whew, wow, zowie. Well, I guess that's 3 words. Well, 2 words and a sound. In any case, and by Amazon and PayPal. Still my favorite 2 companies. Amazon, does 3 things no one else can do. They have everything. Whatever you order, they'll get it for you. They'll send it right to you. And the second thing is they already have it. They don't even have to order it. They have so much. They have one of those warehouses that's a mile long and a mile wide and a mile deep and a mile high. That's a big warehouse. They have everything in it. And you get to them. And by the way, to get to them, you don't have to go on your computer or your iPhone or your laptop. If that's a phrase, and it may not be, because I, as some of you know, don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to electronic things. But boy, oh boy, what you do is you go to our website, LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. It sounds like a police car in Crusader Rabbit. I like that effect. Anyway, you go to our website, and we have a banner that says Amazon. You click that banner, then you go take a nap. And then, by the way, they send us a percentage of what you send to them. That's the third thing that I love so much. They send us here at the show in cash. They send us part of what you order, part of what you get. And we use that money, of course. We put it in our big steel box, and we save it for our next big fancy fried chicken dinner with 2 drinks beforehand in a different place. And by PayPal. PayPal, boy, folks, you know what? They make you feel like you're saving the world just by getting in touch with them. And who knows, maybe you are. And if you enjoy our show, and why wouldn't you? And you'd like to send us a few bucks to help out, and why wouldn't you? You can do it through PayPal. And instead of, I don't like words like donate or pay what you like or join the Platinum Committee. I always like to say, buy us some drinks. You know what? Because there are different levels. Level 1 through 5, all the way up to, we're driving to Florida! Boy. You know, am I on the coolest people in the world list, by the way? I was just asking Colonel Jeff, and like the friend he is, he nodded a happy yes. And so you know what? You go down to PayPal. Look for the PayPal banner on our website, too, because we have one. That's, remember, LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. That's great. It's terrific. It's so silly. That's like doing a podcast on Forbidden Planet. I love that. And thank you in advance, folks. Thank you for those who've sent money already. It means a lot to us. Every little bit helps us keep the old leg lamp lit. And thank you to everyone who's contributed and is about to. It really means a lot to us. And, well, you know what? That brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. Boy, it is the truth that it's nothing better than telling a good joke and passing it on to you, finding one and passing it on to you. And if you like it, you can pass it on to your friends and loved ones too. And this is a pretty good joke. I like this, and the Colonel liked it too. Boy, oh boy, I heard this joke. This is one of those, never mind, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50, 70, 110 years ago. And it's a good joke, and here it is. In the middle of New York City, down at all where the federal courthouse is, and all the big state courthouses, and my dad worked in all those places. My dad was a lawyer. He was a great lawyer, too. And you know what? But down in one, a big official one, state courthouse, the Superior Court, and there's a big dramatic trial going on, and the next witness is called. And he turns out to be a rabbi, very religious, and he's got the black coat on and the black hat and long black beard, and the judge just sees him coming up, and he turns to the bailiff and says, "Go get the Yiddish interpreter." And, well, the rabbi walks over to the judge and says, "Your Honor, please, Forgive me, but I must remonstrate the court. If the mere manner of my garb suggests my facility or lack of facility with the English language, that's prejudicial. It so happens I'm a graduate of Harvard, I was a Rhodes Scholar, and I'm currently employed by the United Nations as an interpreter and translator for 10 different languages. And the interpreter turns to the judge and says, Your Honor, der Mann hat gesucht, kann raten English besser von dir. That makes me laugh. You don't have to, that's one of those jokes also, you don't have to speak Yiddish to laugh at that. All you need to hear is, Your Honor, der Mann hat gesucht. But you know what? And by the way, what that means is, Your Honor, the man just said that he can speak English better than you. That's what it actually means. But in any case, that's a pretty good joke. That says a lot about courts and trials in New York City, and I like it very much. Very much. My dad did. God bless him. He was a lawyer in all those buildings there. He had so many stories. Sometimes were funny, sometimes were very dramatic. He's representing people who were convicted or he got off on something. And then he had, there was one group of guys. It was a gang of guys of gangsters. And when I say gang, by the way, I don't mean gang the way we think of the word today. It was a gang in the 1950s, 1960s sense where all the guys in the gang, 4 or 5 guys, all have, dark shirts and white ties under their suits. And they all say things like, hey, boss, to the boss, because the gang had a boss, the guy who planned the crimes. My dad called them the gang that couldn't shoot straight because they were never that good at what they were doing, which is, stealing stuff. They found out there was a truckload of platinum being transported, and they were very adventurous, and they spent a lot of money getting uniforms, and they were going to hijack the truck and electronic goods, and they had a couple were wearing phony cop uniforms, and a couple were dressed as the truck drivers, and they pulled it off. They succeeded. They stole the truck. And that was when they realized that it wasn't a truckload of platinum, it was a truckload of nickel, which it turns out was worth just less than the money they had spent getting ready to steal the truckload of platinum. So they not only didn't make money, they lost money, and they, driving off into the sunset in that truck. You idiot. No, boss, I ain't the idiot. I told Bobby and he didn't want to tell you. And they're off into the sunset they go. And my dad, they liked my dad. And they never paid anything, by the way. That, this wasn't a lot of money to get. It was a couple of $100 for this. And they were always going to prison, and then there was a few $100s for that. But they always... They didn't want to pay. So my dad used to call him, say, like a month later, after whatever it was, and to ask for the money. That's how he made his living. And they'd always say the same thing. They didn't want to pay, but the head of the gang would always say, hey, Mr. Miller, you need a suit? And that was his way of, they could get suits. Guess how? But, you need a suit, Mr. Miller? No, thank you. You know what? Why don't you pay me what you owe me? How about your wife? She need a washer dryer? Because, we can get them easy. And no, thank you. And this one time in the, this is a big court, New York State Superior Court, and they were caught on something, and they're about to be sentenced. And there was a lunch break before the sentencing. So my dad was with them, and they're in the courthouse because they're prisoners now, and they're about to be sentenced. So they can't just all walk out and go get a bite of lunch. So they go to the cafeteria inside the court there, and down a few flights, and my dad said, as they're walking along with the trays, sliding along in a cafeteria style, He said it was just like Animal House. The guys in the gang were reaching forward. They'd take a whole sandwich and put it in their pockets, and then they'd, to grab something else and stuff it in their mouths and put the little plate back, and they were chewing as they go, and whatever, taking everything. And my dad noticed this, and they're about to be sentenced to prison for a crime on which they were convicted. And they're still walking through this line, stealing everything. And the head of the gang saw my dad looking at them, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Miller, we're crooks." And my dad said he had to laugh at that because, that was the explanation. Oh, hey, Mr. Miller, we're crooks. Oh, okay, so I get it now. So it's like a 24-hour thing. You just steal forever. But boy, oh boy, sometimes the guys he knew were they were funny, and they would come to the house. Sometimes they'd change their names. Never mind what the old names were. But there's one guy named, and that's right, it was like Bill Wilson. He had changed his name to that, and he didn't look anything like a Bill Wilson. He was a mob guy, and but he was going straight. I was about to say, hey, it felt like a gangster thing to say. He was going straight, see, and he would always come over, and he wrote poetry now, and they were just really 4-line things, and it was okay, when he was nice. He'd come to the house. He would always give us. I remember he gave me a transistor radio once. And my dad would say to him, look, Bill, do me a favor. Don't give the kids presents, like that. Oh, I got a lot of them, Milty. Yeah, well, I know you have a lot of them. I'm sure you have a lot of them, but you can't bring one. No, they're all right. They fell off a truck. Look, Bill, do me a favor. Just please don't give anything to my kids that was stolen. But they were more funny than anything else. And my dad, God bless him, was a great lawyer and always took good care of them. But that's a pretty good joke. I hope you like it. That the judge calls the Yiddish interpreter. Oh, excuse me. Please pass it along if you do. And that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. Oh, boy. By the way, that guy got that cough just from telling Bill Wilson he wasn't a fan of his poetry. So Bill reached out one hand, and those were big hands. They were very big. He could pick up a keg of beer with a hand and and take it where he wanted. But you know what? This is a terrific poem by James Russell Lowell. And I hadn't heard of him before. He's an American poet, lived from 1819 to 1891. Interesting man, though. Get this. He was he was part of the Fireside Poets, and he earned a degree from Harvard Law School, became involved with the abolitionist movement before the Civil War, and he used his poetry to express his anti-slavery views. He also wrote satires. He was very well known and very successful. His satires, by the way, were said to have been an inspiration to Mark Twain and H.L. Mencken. So this is quite a guy. He became the editor of the Atlantic Monthly and then went on, get this, to be the ambassador to Spain and later to England. So this is an interesting cat, James Russell Lowell. And this poem is called A Stanza on Freedom. They are slaves who fear to speak for the fallen and the weak. They are slaves who will not choose hatred, scoffing, and abuse. rather than in silence shrink from the truth they needs must think. They are slaves who dare not to be in the right with two or three. That's a lovely verse, isn't it, folks? I mean, and I asked the colonel, I wasn't sure what the two or three meant there, and he was saying that, that this was the poet, Mr. Lowell, telling people, you know what? If you get involved, if you open your mouth, if you stand up on a box on a street corner and start making a speech, don't do that, by the way. I mean, do that in Speaker's Corner in a park. But if you were, you should not be afraid of just appealing to two or three people. Do that. That has value. Don't worry about the hordes of, thousands and tens of thousands of people who think you're right. And, but that's good. I like that verse. A Stanza on Freedom by James Russell Lowell. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show. Triple M, the Magic Movie Moment. Folks, I love movies, and I know you do too, and this is as much fun to think this way as reading a good poem or telling a good joke. This is a movie from 1957 called The Prince and the Showgirl, starring Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe, and it was directed and produced by Laurence Olivier also, and shot in England. I love this movie. I've loved it. I've seen it on TV, maybe 20 times, 50 times. And boy, it's good. It's so well made and so well acted. And it was originally called The Sleeping Prince. 1957 British-American romantic comedy film. And written, by the way, screenplay by Terence Rattigan. And it was based on his 1953 stage play, The Sleeping Prince. It was filmed in London. And I love this, folks. It's set in 1911. And, Laurence Olivier, who is great, of course. No one needs to be told this, but I'm saying it anyway. He's just magnificent in everything he's ever done. And Marilyn Monroe, the same. She was, of course, gorgeous and just radiant. But she was a wonderful actress and, wanted to be so much more. As you all know, she died a young woman. And the circumstances was that, who knows? And, I don't care because I get to look at her on the screen. It just reminded me, by the way, that there was a bar. I guess there always is, isn't there? But there was a bar that in our general area, just a couple miles from our house. I used to meet my friend Michael Chernychin there. And he's a great writer, too. And he was working on Law and Order. He was the producer there and great writer. And he and I used to meet, and maybe one or two of the other writers from that show at this bar on Lancashire, I think it was. And I can't remember the name, but what I remember is, not surprisingly, when you went into the restroom to use the restroom, they had over the facility in the restroom a photograph that was just beautifully shot of Marilyn Monroe. And she was out at a party, and she was just looked gorgeous and wearing a dress. And, the plain fact is there was nothing under the dress. There was just Marilyn Monroe under the dress there. And that's the kind of thing. I don't know where they got that photo, but I can tell you that I looked at it a lot. They must have had men just peeing in and outside of that toilet just all over the place, because once you took a look at, good Lord, that photograph of Marilyn Monroe, it was pretty great. I don't mind saying it was terrific. And in fact, when Michael would call up and say, hey, You want to get together, say after work over here, and maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock, and have a quick one, which meant 10. And I said, sure. And he said, do you want to go to one place? And I said, come on, you know where I want to go. And he said, it's right near Universal where they were working. And I was too. But I mean, I said that let's go there. So that, and I'm not going to pee all day long just so I get the chance to walk in and go right to the bathroom to see Marilyn. But I love her. I love her and everything she does. And you know what? This movie is wonderful. It did not get good reviews. It did not get a good response that way. And I think they're wrong. The acting I thought was beautiful. And there were stories. Well, they didn't get along. Olivier and Monroe. And you know what? Yes, they did. They did on that screen. It's a beautiful story of these two separate souls falling for each other. And he plays the Regent Prince of Carpathia in 1911. And that's, Prince Charles, in fact. And he brings his son, his son is Nicholas, who's going to be king there, and his mother-in-law, who's the widower queen of Carpathia. It's a wonderful story, folks. It's shot beautifully. Olivier was not only a great actor, but he was a great director, too, and he produced it just beautifully. And there's a scene before, this is the coronation of George V, who's about to become the King of England. And they are all invited to go there, and there's a lot of intrigue because the British government wants Carpathia to stay in their alliance. This is before World War I, but all these folks were talking about it. And that's what they're maneuvering to do. And folks, Olivier chose to show the coronation by showing the guests in their seats in these in Westminster Abbey, and old wooden pews, and I don't know if pews is the right word, but long wooden benches that are very elaborately carved, and everyone is dressed to the nines. And he's there having met, and they've started to fall for each other, and he's having met, Marilyn Monroe, who's playing Elsie, who was a showgirl in a show in London. And Olivier meets her, and they already care for each other. And this whole story takes place in just a few days, really. And folks, the reason I love this scene so much, and it's such a magic movie moment to me, is you never see the coronation. He doesn't film 700 people walking up the big wide main aisle there and holding all the trappings, the crown and the cross and everything that they're going to carry up there to coronate George V. And you know what? I loved it that way. I loved that he showed it all through the faces of the people who were there as guests. And he bows his head as the procession goes by. You don't see the procession, but you feel it in what the people do on camera. He bows his head and holds it down there as well, and everyone else does too. All the other guests all bow their heads, and Marilyn Monroe bows her head too, because she's keeping an eye on him to see what he does to be proper. And then a couple of times during this process, and the music is playing, the music he chooses, it's royal coronation music. You don't see that either. You don't see anything but them. And then Marilyn, as the American showgirl, Elsie, just a couple of times just raises her head a little bit, the only one there, because she wants to see it. She's the American visitor who wants to see the prince go by and all the other royal folks walk by in their big official way. And just the way it's shot and just the way it's acted, when I was a kid or a teenager or an adult, you know what? I love it. It really tells that story in that movie so well. And that's a magic movie moment to me. That's the way these characters acted and lived in their day in 1911. And boy, oh boy, well, what happened after that in the world, in World War I and then World War II? Well, it doesn't need to be dwelled on that much because, as Colonel Jeff pointed out, this movie is not the story of a coronation. It's the story of love. And it's the story of how these two people find each other and maybe, or maybe not, stay together or get together again. And, well, commit to falling in love with each other. They will or they won't, but in this scene in Westminster Abbey for the coronation, it was great to see them act properly and then to see Marilyn Monroe just pick her head up, the only one in the entire crowd of guests who picks her head up to see the royalty as they go by. Please watch that. You know what? Please watch it. If you haven't seen it, it's called, well, The Prince and the Showgirl, and it's terrific. It makes you feel like you're really in there. It makes you feel, well, like you were a guest at the coronation too. And, boy, folks, it's starring Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe, directed and produced by Olivier. What a great cast, too. Think of it sometimes. If you haven't seen it, or if you've seen it 50 times like me, I'd like to see it again right now. The Prince and the Showgirl. And that's why it seemed like a good idea to make the orchestra and the dancers dedicated to Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe. Did they like each other? Who knows? They worked hard, and they put out something just terrific. And, well, you know what? It's good to celebrate that. Something terrific. You know, my wife's birthday, one of the reasons we're on the mainland now and not on Milleronia is that 2 days ago was my wife's birthday. And she, our great friend Kirsten, that she's a good friend of both my wife and mine, and she's a trainer and a runner, and I wish I could think of better words to describe this. Oh boy, she breaks a good sweat. No, she's just fabulous. She's gorgeous and just fun and smart as a whip. And she was a good friend of Eileen's anyway. And I said to her, do me a favor, just send her a text seeing what she might want for her birthday because, well, I wanted to go out with our younger son, who's a senior in high school now, and also our older son, the Marine, who came back from his tour in the Middle East. And I know I mentioned that to you, but he's staying with us now. And he has some leave time off. And boy, folks, I don't mind telling you, it's just wonderful having him around. We can watch TV together, and 7 seconds is spent. I watch the TV, but then there's another 20 seconds where I just stare at him. And, well, if you love someone, you know what I mean. But my wife didn't want a birthday gift. She said back to our friend, she said, oh, you know what, because our friend texted her saying, hey, your men want to know what you might like so they can go get you something nice for your birthday. And she wrote back, oh, no gifts. Please just tell them no gifts, just hugs, which is a nice way to put it. And so I said to, and my boys, the younger one was off from school. I said, let's go get Mommy some of the things that would be great for her birthday anyway, because she had a long day. They were shooting the show that she's writing on, the executive producer on KC Undercover. And she wasn't going to be back till 8:30 or 9. So I went out, and our younger son had something important to do. He wanted to play his favorite game, and this one's called Death to All, I think. I always kid him about that because he's great at these games, these video games, but he likes to play it. Every time I say, come on in, watch your brother and I are going to watch a nice World War II show or something that's in color. That's the name of one of the shows, World War II in color. And because I bet it was. But he said that's all right. So I went with our older son, the Marine, and we went to Party City to get balloons for Mommy. And they have all sorts of balloons. It's a big Halloween store, which scares me, frankly. And but that's the place to go for balloons that say "Happy Birthday" and in different ways. Hey, and the big balloon says "Happy," and then underneath it's letters that blow up too that you inflate that say "B-Day," and those are held up by other balloons. And then we got her some heart-shaped balloons, a couple in green and a couple in red, and some crepe too. Those things, big rolls of paper that stretch out a little bit, and they're only about 3 inches wide, but they're 20 feet long or something like that, more. And we got a couple of rolls of that, and we got her there a card too, a nice birthday card with a picture of puppies on it. And they're cute dogs and nothing in the card, nothing there. And the three of us, when we all got home, when the three of us wrote some very nice sentiments about Mom there and their mom and my wife, and that was nice too. And then we got a cake at the local Ralph's that said "Happy Birthday" on it. And my older boy remembered that, Mommy likes those velvet cakes, red velvet cakes. I don't know if that's the technical term. I said, you're right, though. And we got them to put on the "Happy Birthday." And then, when we were at Party City also, he picked up a package of poppers. Those little, I know you've seen them, they little liquor bottles made out of paper. They're only 2 or 3 inches long, and they have a string coming out of the cork side of it. So you hold it up and you pull that string, and it pops. You know how loudly it pops, by the way, just in case you haven't figured it out or haven't seen one of these? The answer is very loud. It's very, very loud. Our younger son popped a couple of them as we lit the cake, and as Mommy was about to make her wish and blow out the candles. And boy, that pop sounds like, it sounds like an assassin with a gun. It sounds like that. That's the way they got the Archduke Ferdinand in 1914. But, that thing goes bang. And we still have a bunch of the poppers left over, because once you do that, I did one yesterday on my own. And, you pull it and pop it, and it, bam, it just pow, pop, bang. And I don't know why. I guess you have to, kind of. But I did. And you know what, though, folks? The main thing is, it was a terrific birthday. My wife, God bless her, was so happy when she came home after a long day of shooting her show and got home almost 9 o'clock, had gotten up, left at 6 in the morning, and she saw in the balloons and the bunting, that crepe that we had rolled here and there, and the card, and the cake that was out of its box, and had just 4 candles kind of jammed in. Weren't really birthday candles, but it doesn't matter. And she was so happy of what we had made, rather than going out and getting a bunch of gifts, a scarf or a coat or a bracelet or something like that. And that meant the world to me and the boys, that she was so touched by what we had done. And that means something to me and you as well. That's a good way to think about gifts. And you know what? It doesn't have to be something fancy, because it's the little things in life that are so important. Yes, the big things are big, and they're important too. A wedding, a birth, a new job or something like that. That's important, but so are the little things. Our other dog, Ozzy is asleep, by the way, on the floor of the studio here. And our other dog, Maggie, got skunked last night. I mean, she got out back, and when my wife got home and took her out back, sent her out into the backyard where she could do her stuff there, and she came in again, and well, she was skunked. That happens sometimes. We live in the hills here, and all the dogs we've had have been skunked, and that's what, well, that's what skunks do. That's the whole point of being a skunk. And my wife picked her up and covered her in a towel and picked her up to take her upstairs. And I was going to be the assistant, the apprentice. So she said, "Follow me. You've got work to do too." And I did. I entered the pantry there where we put her in the sink, the pantry sink, which is big. It's about 3 feet wide and 2 feet, 3 feet long, 2 feet wide. And you know what, Maggie? I haven't been a fan. I've told you that. I've said that before. But bless her heart, she didn't complain or moan or try to get out or nip us, or she took it like a good dog. And my wife has these products that are terrific. One is called Nature's Miracle Skunk Deodorizer. You can't have a better name than that, really, I know you might think, I thought, is that the name they had to settle with, Well, what else are you going to call it? And the other product was oatmeal shampoo. Same thing. That's the only name they had for it. And that's what it is. It's oatmeal shampoo. And my wife gave her, and she's tough. She's very loving with doggies and cats and things like that. But she knows how to, put the fear of God into them. And to do it, get going, and you don't wait, and you don't say, "Oh, are you okay?" She can speak nicely to the dog, but she's got to hold it there, and she's got to put all the stuff on. And she put on one coating of Nature's Miracles Skunk Deodorizer, and really rubbed it in everything, the tip of the tail, till you got to be careful all over the face there, but you got to get it done, because this thing smelled like, a skunk. She'd been skunked, and could have been a million times worse, but she was good and skunked, and everywhere, the paws, the belly, the underthing, everything all over. As my wife said, you got to get it. You got to, don't be shy. And she was teaching me, and I said, you know what? Because she's right, I would be shy. I would be, I don't want to do this. But you know what? She did it, and you got to do it. And then she did another coating of the Nature's Miracle Skunk Deodorizer. I just love saying that name again, by the way. So she put 2 on and rinsed them off in between, but put 2 of those on and deep and, rubbing it in and doing everything. And she did a great job. And then using the sink there to wash her off, to, get her under that, the stink. It was a stink, but the sink can be moved there as the water comes out. And she rinsed her. She showered her up in that sink and got it all off. And then did 2 coats of the oatmeal shampoo. And the same thing, you got to get it on there, and you got to, get it in there. And the whole thing, same thing, tip of the tail to tip of the nose, everything. Every part of the dog. And then washed that off. And then you're supposed to let the dog sit there in the sink, stand there, and just kind of de-skunk itself. You just let it sit there and make sure everything took up to 20 minutes. You want to just let it, after you've finished everything. And then at that point, she took her out of the sink and wrapped her in a towel and was rubbing her dry and had treats ready. And I was doing this too, that was part of my apprentice work. You get the treats. We like pepperonis. The dogs love them. Oh, I shouldn't have said that too loud, because Ozzy will lose his mind if he thinks I have one. But yeah, we put them, tear them up into bits. And I'd give her one on my hand while my wife was just rubbing her dry, and again and again and again rubbing dry. And folks, I'm telling you, she did it so completely that she did it. The dog was clean. The dog was de-skunked. The Nature's Miracle skunk deodorizer and the oatmeal shampoo worked beautifully. And boy, oh boy, folks, that doggie she'd shake herself a couple of times in the pantry there. But you know what? My wife was right. The dog was dry, and the dog was clean as a whistle. And as she said, you don't smell like a skunk at all anymore. And she did that job. And when we woke up this morning, that doggie was de-skunked and was just ready to be a dog. So that's pretty good, folks. And I want to tell you, though, and that's the other main reason that I'm here and not on the mainland, that our older boy came home from his Marine duty, and boy, oh boy, to have a kid like that back home and sleeping in his old room and just to stare at, which I loved so much. Whew. And we would say, this is the biggest thing, it doesn't have to be fancy to me. And it doesn't have to be fancy to you either. The best thing I've ever done around the house has been after I make dinner, my wife is at work on the show there, and after dinner, boys will shower up, and I want to tell you something about the dinners I make, and they'd shower up and scrub up, and to our older boy, the little one wants to, play Death for All on the laptop, and then the older one says, I said, come on, let's get in the big bed, which is in our room, and I said, let's watch a show that we love. And he said, sounds good to me. And this was, there are 2 World War II flashback shows that we both really like. And one is called World War II in Color, which again doesn't sound like a fancy name, I guess, but that's what it is. And one of the best shows ever made, though, World at War. Boy, folks, World at War, narrated by Laurence Olivier. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to give him respect by bringing him and mentioning him on the show. It's such a great show, World at War. It's in black and white. And, it amazed me when I watched shows like this, who photographed all that? Who photographed the German bombers being shot down from behind? And you see them start to tilt and start to, weave off. And who photographs these things? All these things, troops marching, and because it's such a big job, and there was so much footage of these things. And they had something great on the show there. We were watching, last night, that Spitfires, this was in the 1943, I think it was, and just the English planes and the French planes, England saved the day. They saved themselves with those Spitfires in the Battle of Britain, which was constant, attacks and invasions attempts by the Nazis and bombers and fighter planes. But the English pilots in those Spitfires saved England. But they needed help more toward 1943. The Spitfires and the French planes were just not cutting it the way they wanted to. The Luftwaffe was all over them. Was faster and tougher with their arms, and how they fired. But then, guess who won the day? That's right, we did, because the Americans had a new plane that was finally ready and went right into battle, and that was the Mustang. What a great name for that plane, too. Our Mustangs won the day. They were faster and tougher and better armed than the Luftwaffe. And these guys knew it. They all knew it. And you know what? That was really something to see. But then we see our favorite show is Man versus Food. It's not on as much as it used to be. The star is Adam Richman. And I may have mentioned this before, but we love it so much. This guy finds places all over our country and in Canada. And he's even gone to some foreign places too. Like, well, not crazy foreign, I mean, but like England, and he's been to Puerto Rico a few times on the show. And they find things, folks, they find things that are just incredible. And you can't eat them. I mean, he would really try to eat them. They had one with this is amazing. Get this. Just listen to this. There are these competitions a lot of these restaurants all over America have. Well, if you can eat this, you get your picture on the wall and a T-shirt, which doesn't sound like much, but you'd want that. And there's a lot of those dishes to eat. They're so big. This one, though, and they have names like, Charlie's Favorite or Angel Divine or something like that. They have, and they're welcome to name it whatever they like. But this one, folks, get this. It was a silver platter, and I don't mean gray or silver color or like a square thing to bake cookies in. I'm saying this was a silver platter, and it had, little frills and silver things on it, and you could hold it. It was an oval shape, and it was big, and it had to be because the dish was 3 layers, 2 pounds of spaghetti, which, by the way, if you think about it, that's a lot of spaghetti. That's an unbelievable amount of spaghetti. That's like 3, 4, 5 boxes of spaghetti. 2 pounds of it. And that gets put right on the platter. That's the first layer, okay? Then on top of that, 2 pounds of cheddar cheese. 2 pounds on top of the spaghetti, which meant you can't see the spaghetti anymore. And that's 2 layers. 2 pounds of spaghetti, 2 pounds of cheddar cheese, which blocks out the spaghetti, and then the top layer, 2 pounds of bottle cap peppers. I'd never heard that name before, bottle cap peppers. But folks, that's what they were. That's what they look like. They're about the size of bottle caps, and 2 pounds of them. 2 pounds. That's one of those bottle caps could feed a platoon, but they had 2 pounds of this on there. So that's 3 layers. 2 pounds of spaghetti, everything in 2 pounds. 2 pounds of spaghetti, 2 pounds of cheddar cheese, 2 pounds of bottle cap peppers. And that's the dish on the silver platter. And no one's ever gotten a picture on the wall for that one. And this is what I loved, though, was, you know what the name of it was? Or is? The name of it is No Freaking Way. And I got such a kick out of that. That's the name. Again, not Charlie's Favorite, not anything to do with a member of the family. No Freaking Way. Spelled that way. Freakin apostrophe. I got a kick out of that because that's them naming that dish exactly right. I mean, that's the right way to name it. So is someone going to eat that? No freaking way. Is someone going to succeed and get his picture on the wall for that? No freaking way. And well, what about the T-shirts? No freaking way. I got a kick out of that, and I loved watching it with my son. And you know what? I know it all, that just to know that Mom's coming home and we're all together, that's a toast to make, by the way. When your family is all right, everyone's okay, and everyone's together, and you can be in bed together watching how they make No Freaking Way. And folks, it meant a lot to me, and it will again tonight, and it will again after we do our show here, when I'm going to wake that boy up, that young man up, and he's on leave, so he can sleep as long as he likes. And he and I will get something to eat and get some supplies for the house tonight. I know that. And so do you. And we know, as you know, Homer is Homer and Pluto is a planet. And remember, folks, as always, if you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. Enjoy yourselves, be well, and we'll see you here next time.